The colony of Nova Prime was quiet under the twin suns, but the calm was only skin deep. Smoke curled from the shattered roofs of homes, and the air still carried the acrid scent of burning metal. Humans scurried through narrow streets, faces pale with fear, hearts heavy with loss. Their lives had been reduced to obedience, survival, and hiding. For centuries, the Vryloks, a coalition of alien warlords, had ruled over dozens of star systems. Their empire thrived on fear, using brutality to keep other species subservient. Humans, with their small numbers and lack of military power, were considered insignificant, weak beings who would obey without question. That assumption would soon prove disastrous. In the middle of the chaos, a small figure ran through the alleyways, a little girl named Lena. She was only 8, with bright eyes that reflected hope, the kind that stubbornly refuses to die even under oppression. Lena clutched a worn-out doll to her chest as the screams of her neighbors echoed behind her. Soldiers of the Vryloks were everywhere, their four-legged bodies covered in chitin armor, their multi-jointed arms wielding energy whips, eyes glowing with a cruel intelligence. "Lina!" her mother called, voice trembling. But before Lina could reach her, a sharp scream cut the air. A Vrylok's warrior raised its whip and struck her down. The girl fell, her doll rolling to the side. Her tiny body became a symbol of all that had been stolen from humanity. Their peace, their dignity, their safety. In that moment, a strange silence fell over Nova Prime. Even the Vryloks hesitated, sensing something they had not understood. Humans were not just weak, pliable beings. Lena's death sparked something unseen. A small ember of defiance in hearts that had long been caged by fear. Far above Nova Prime, in a hidden orbital station, Commander Elias Kane watched the colony's communications feed. He was a human, once part of the United Earth Defense Fleet, now a veteran, living in exile. His gray hair and lined face carried the weight of countless battles, but his eyes were sharp, burning with a quiet fire. When he saw Lena fall on the feed, something inside him snapped. It wasn't the first human casualty under Vrylok's oppression, but it was different. There was a cruelty in this act that went beyond war. The aliens wanted humans to bow, to hide, to obey. Yet here was a child, dying in the streets. And for the first time, Kane felt a surge of anger so pure it demanded action. "This has gone too far," he muttered to himself, fingers tightening around the edge of the console. "They think we are weak. They think we fear. They have no idea what humans can do when pushed too far." Kane had seen this before. In the past, humans had been underestimated, dismissed as fragile and expendable. And yet, in every corner of the galaxy, humans had survived, adapted, and sometimes thrived in conditions that no one else could endure. The Vryloks didn't know it yet, but this underestimation was their greatest mistake. That evening, in the shadow of Nova Prime's smoldering ruins, humans began to gather in secret. Farmers, engineers, teachers, and former soldiers all came together quietly, whispers passing from person to person. They spoke not of surrender, but of survival, justice, and something they hadn't dared feel for generations: hope. One of the first to speak was Maris Talon, a young engineer whose parents had died in a Vryloks raid years ago. "We cannot live like this," she said, her voice trembling, but firm. "We have always hidden, always obeyed, always waited for the next attack. Lena's death, it proves they think they can take anything from us. They are wrong." The crowd murmured in agreement. Kane arrived shortly after, his presence commanding but calm. He looked at each person, his gaze sweeping over the weary faces, the frightened eyes, the hands that had built ships and machines but never held weapons in rebellion. "We are small," Kane admitted, "and they are many. But the Vryloks have forgotten one thing about humans: we adapt. We think. We feel. We fight in ways they cannot predict. They have ruled with fear for too long. It is time to remind them what they underestimated. Over the next few weeks, Kane began organizing the humans of Nova Prime. They worked by night, hiding from the ever-watchful Vryloks patrols. At first, the humans were clumsy. They had no military training, no proper weapons, and no hope of defeating a Vrylok strike team in a direct fight. Instead, Kane taught them to use their weaknesses as strengths. Humans were small and underestimated, so they could move quickly, hide easily, and think creatively. A sabotaged communication tower here, a collapsed supply route there, small victories that seemed insignificant to the aliens, but filled the humans with confidence. Maris Talon worked alongside Kane, engineering devices that humans could use to level the playing field. Improvised traps, energy dampeners, and even basic drones became tools of resistance. Every success, no matter how small, became a story of courage whispered in the dark. Even children, though young and untrained, found ways to help. Lena's memory fueled their determination. Her death became a rallying point, a reminder that humanity was more than flesh, and fear it was resilience, ingenuity, and heart. Meanwhile, the Vryloks noticed strange disturbances. Patrols returned late, supply shipments were delayed, and communications went dark for hours at a time. Their commanders scowled at reports, certain that humans were incapable of such organized defiance. "They are weak," growled one Vrylok's overlord, its voice like grinding metal. "Humans cannot resist. They will obey, as they always have." But not all the aliens were confident. A few, more cautious and intelligent, began to whisper that perhaps humans were unpredictable. And in war, unpredictability was dangerous. One night, Kane led a small team to sabotage a Vrylok supply depot near the colony's outskirts. The humans moved silently, shadows among shadows, hearts pounding but faces determined. They planted explosives, cut through alien security systems, and retreated just as a patrol arrived. The depot exploded in a controlled detonation, scattering supplies and forcing the Vryloks to respond. To the humans, it was a minor success, but to the aliens, it was unheard of. How could a species they considered fragile organize and execute such precise actions? As Kane watched the smoke rise from the hill above the depot, he knew this was only the beginning. The Vryloks ruled with fear, but fear was no longer enough. The humans had felt it, and now they were beginning to understand it and use it. In the following days, more humans joined the movement. Word spread to other colonies via hidden channels. Messages of hope and rebellion traveled faster than the Vryloks could track. Humans began experimenting with psychological tactics, leaving small traps that would confuse or frighten the alien patrols. At night, children whispered the name Lena in secret, imagining her as a guiding star for their courage. Parents taught them simple strategies: how to hide, signal, or distract. Every act of defiance, no matter how small, was a seed planted in the fertile soil of human determination. Even as the Vryloks continued their terror raids, humans were no longer cowering. The aliens' fear-based control was cracking, bit by bit. It was a subtle shift, almost invisible to outsiders, but those who lived under oppression felt it in every heartbeat. One morning, Kane gathered the group in a hidden hangar, where old spacecraft and equipment lay abandoned. "This is not just about revenge," he told them. "Lena's death is tragic. Yes, but it is also a message. We cannot continue to hide. We cannot continue to obey. We must take the first step toward something greater, something the Vryloks cannot crush, because it is not just strength or weapons. It is human spirit." Maris Talon, standing near the back, nodded. "Then, let's make them remember," she said softly. "Let's make them remember that humans are not weak. That we will fight back, no matter the cost. Kane smiled faintly, feeling the same spark that had ignited when he first saw Lena's death. It was more than anger, it was hope, determination, and an unshakable belief that humans were destined for more than fear. As night fell over Nova Prime, the colony seemed quieter than before. But beneath the surface, humans were stirring. Fires of courage burned in secret rooms, in hidden tunnels, in the hearts of those who had long been told they were powerless. The death of a child, tragic and cruel, had done something unexpected. It had awakened a fury and determination that no Vrylox could anticipate. Somewhere in the shadows, Kane prepared his team for the first real strike, knowing it would be dangerous, perhaps deadly. But he also knew one truth. Humans had learned something the Vrylox would never understand. They were not meant to be broken. And as the first stars appeared in the twin suns' twilight, the humans of Nova Prime took their first quiet step toward vengeance. And so began the shadow of human resistance, a spark that would one day grow into a flame the galaxy could not ignore. The night after the first strike, Nova Prime's hidden resistance seemed to hum with quiet energy. Humans moved in shadows, repairing, planning, and whispering messages of hope. Commander Elias Kane walked through the underground tunnels, his boots echoing softly against cold metal walls. He paused as he watched Maris Talon examine a crude map spread across a table. Lines, dots, and marks covered the surface supply routes, patrol patterns, weak points in the Vrylox defenses. "We're growing stronger," Kane said, almost to himself. "Every day we survive, every strike we make, it changes them. They think fear controls us. They're wrong." Maris looked up, eyes bright. "And Lena's memory, it's like fire. Everyone remembers why we fight. It's not just survival anymore. We have purpose." Kane nodded. "Yes, purpose is more dangerous than fear." The next strike was planned for a Vrylox communications hub. It was heavily guarded, a place the aliens believed untouchable. But Kane and his team had studied the patrols, watched their routines, and discovered that the aliens relied too heavily on routine. Predictability was a weakness humans could exploit. The humans worked in silence for days, building small devices to disrupt communications, creating decoys, and marking hidden paths through the dense industrial zones around the hub. Every tool, every plan, reflected human creativity and daring. The Vrylox might be stronger physically, but humans were unpredictable. When the night arrived, the team moved like shadows. Children and civilians had helped, hiding supplies and signaling patrol movements. Kane led the small group through narrow tunnels that opened just outside the hub. "Remember," Kane whispered, "we don't fight them directly. We confuse them, slow them down, make them afraid of what they cannot see. Fear is their weapon. Let's turn it back on them." Maris triggered the first device. A loud explosion rang out, drawing Vrylox soldiers to the far side of the compound. Smoke and sparks filled the air. Kane and his team slipped through the chaos, planting disruption devices that would scramble communications and shut down security sensors. Within an hour, the hub was in chaos. Patrols ran in confusion, trying to respond. But the humans had vanished before the aliens could catch them. From a hill overlooking the hub, Kane allowed himself a small smile. "One step at a time," he said. "They will learn. Humans are not weak." Word of the strike spread quickly among the colonies. Hidden networks of communication carried the news. Humans were fighting back. Small groups began forming elsewhere. Inspired by Nova Prime's actions, they adopted similar tactics: guerrilla strikes, sabotage, and clever deception. Humans began to innovate beyond weapons, using the aliens' fear against them. They left false trails, fake signals, and decoy traps. The Vrylox were masters of intimidation, but they had no experience with cunning, adaptable opponents. In one remote colony, A team of humans disguised themselves as alien workers, feeding false intelligence to patrols and delaying reinforcements. In another, children rigged simple but effective noise devices that lured patrols into empty fields, wasting their time and creating confusion. Every act, no matter how small, strengthened the human network. Kane knew that the rebellion could not survive as isolated strikes. It had to grow into something bigger, something coordinated. The Vryloks noticed the disturbances and grew concerned. Their overconfidence began to crack. Commanders argued over reports, unable to understand how insignificant humans were suddenly causing major disruptions. "They are unpredictable," said one Vryloks general, his voice tight with irritation. "We cannot control them, as we do the other species. They do not obey fear. They defy it." The observation unsettled the alien leadership. For centuries, fear had worked. Species submitted, surrendered, and obeyed. Humans did not follow the same rules. They adapted, they learned, and they fought back in ways the Vryloks could not anticipate. On Nova Prime, Kane and Maris organized training for new recruits. Humans learned to work together in teams, combining skills and improvisation. Engineers built simple but effective weapons. Civilians practiced stealth and observation, and even the children learned essential survival skills. "The Vryloks rely on routine," Kane explained to a group of recruits. "They predict. They control. We do the opposite. We move, change, adapt. They can't defeat what they cannot understand." Maris added, "Every small victory teaches us something. Every patrol we confuse, every shipment we disrupt, it's proof that humans are stronger than they appear." As the resistance grew, the humans realized that communication was as important as fighting. Kane established a hidden network of couriers and secure channels between colonies. Information flowed quickly. Supply schedules, patrol routines, Vryloks' weaknesses, and even rumors of alien fear. The humans began calling themselves the Flame, a name meant to honor Lena's memory. It spread quietly but firmly through the colonies, a symbol of courage, hope, and resistance. One evening, Kane received a message from another colony. A small human team had ambushed a Vryloks transport, freeing prisoners and seizing supplies. The aliens had been caught completely off guard. "This is it," Kane said, reading the report aloud. "This is how it begins. Humans are not only surviving, they are striking back. And when they strike together, the Vryloks will have to fear us." Maris placed a hand on his shoulder. "We've done well, but we must keep moving. They will retaliate." Kane nodded. "They will try, but humans are not easily broken. Every time they think they scare us, they make us stronger." As the days passed, the Vryloks became more aggressive. Raids increased. Patrols multiplied, and colonies were pressured to surrender. But humans had learned to anticipate their moves, to hide, and to strike at the right moments. In one daring mission, Kane led a group to sabotage a weapons depot. Using tunnels and clever misdirection, they infiltrated the heavily guarded site, planted explosives, and escaped before reinforcements could arrive. The Vryloks were enraged and confused. The humans had moved with impossible speed and intelligence. The humans celebrated in quiet ways. Whispered stories, shared food, small gestures of solidarity. Each victory, each clever maneuver, strengthened their confidence. They began to believe that Lena's death, while tragic, could be the spark of something far greater. The rebellion spread beyond Nova Prime. Humans in other colonies began organizing, inspired by Kane's tactics and Maris's engineering solutions. The network of the Flame became sophisticated, with leaders, scouts, and messengers coordinating strikes across star systems. Kane knew that the next stage would be dangerous. The Vryloks would not ignore these attacks forever. Their empire was built on fear, And fear could turn into fury when the rulers themselves felt threatened. But Kane also knew something crucial. Humans were different from other species. They were not controlled by fear alone. They could adapt, plan, and fight in ways the Vryloks could never predict. That unpredictability was a weapon no alien could defend against completely. One night, Kane walked alone through the empty streets of Nova Prime. Smoke from old fires drifted in the air, the twin suns long gone below the horizon. He thought of Lena, the child whose death had sparked this rebellion. She would be proud, he whispered. We are turning her tragedy into something powerful, something that cannot be ignored. Well, from the shadows, a small group of children ran past, carrying messages between safe houses. One of them paused, looking up at Kane. Commander Kane, the child said, we're ready to help. We want to fight too. Kane smiled faintly. You're already helping, he said. Every action matters. Every brave heart makes the difference. He continued walking, knowing that the rising flame of human defiance was spreading. The Vryloks might have ruled with fear for centuries, but humans had found something they could not crush: courage, creativity, and determination. The following weeks were filled with small victories. Humans learned to work together across colonies, planning simultaneous strikes, sabotaging alien equipment, and rescuing prisoners. The Vryloks grew increasingly frustrated, unable to anticipate where the next strike would occur. Every time a human succeeded, word spread. Even species under Vryloks' control began whispering about the humans, about their bravery, their cleverness, and their unyielding spirit. Fear, once the Vryloks' greatest weapon, was now being used against them. The flame had become more than a group, it had become a symbol. Humans were no longer just survivors. They were a force of change. At the end of Part 2, Kane and Maris stood on a cliff overlooking Nova Prime, watching the twin suns rise over a colony that had endured too much but was now alive with possibility. We are ready, Maris said quietly. Yes, Kane replied. And soon, the Vryloks will understand that fear is not enough to control us. Not anymore. And with that, the humans prepared for the next stage, a stage that would take their rebellion from small strikes to a galaxy-wide challenge. The flame had risen, and it would not be extinguished. The Vryloks Empire had ruled the galaxy with iron claws for centuries, crushing worlds beneath their fear. But now, their power, once absolute, was being tested. In scattered colonies across multiple star systems, humans had risen not with overwhelming numbers or advanced alien technology, but with cunning, courage, and a determination that no Vryloks could predict. At the heart of this rebellion stood Commander Elias Kane. From a hidden command center on Nova Prime, he coordinated the flame, the human resistance that had grown from the ashes of oppression. His gray hair framed a face hardened by war, eyes burning with determination. With him was Maris Talon, the engineer and strategist whose clever devices had already saved countless human lives. This is it, Kane said, gesturing to a holographic map of the Vryloks' capital world. SciFi-Prime. Everything we've worked for leads here. If we strike smartly, we can turn fear into victory. Maris studied the map. They'll expect a frontal attack, she said, her voice calm. They always expect what is obvious. But we're not obvious. We'll strike where they least expect it. We'll make them fear what they cannot see. Kane nodded. Humans have always survived by thinking differently. Today, we prove it again. SciFi-Prime was a fortress planet, its surface bristling with weapons, patrol drones, and psychic wards designed to detect resistance before it even moved. The Vryloks' leadership had no experience facing a foe like humans, one that relied on unpredictability, strategy, and heart. Kane knew that a direct confrontation would be suicidal. The human strength lay in cunning, coordination, and daring not in matching the Vryloks in raw firepower. Small teams of humans moved silently across the surface of SciFiPrime. They used the shadows, underground passages, and abandoned maintenance tunnels to bypass guards and surveillance systems. Every step was calculated. Every movement exploited the aliens' rigid routines. Maris had developed special devices that emitted false energy signals, fooling Vrylok's scanners into detecting phantom troops. Kane's teams planted these devices strategically, creating the illusion of massive human forces where there were only a few. The aliens panicked repeatedly, unsure of where the next strike would come. Meanwhile, civilians in occupied zones watched in awe. Humans from different colonies communicated through hidden networks, sharing intelligence and coordinating small strikes. The Vryloks had built an empire on fear, yet the humans were turning that very fear back on them. Reports of ambushes, sabotage, and inexplicable attacks spread through the empire, making alien commanders jittery and distrustful of each other. On SciFiPrime, Kane led a team to infiltrate a weapons depot supplying patrol forces. Using a combination of stealth, distraction devices, and clever improvisation, the humans disabled the depot without firing a single direct shot. Supplies meant for Vrylok's troops were destroyed, communications jammed, and alien morale shaken. One young recruit, Jaro Lin, barely 16, watched the operation unfold with wide eyes. They won't be able to control us," he whispered. "Not if we keep thinking like this." Kane smiled faintly. "Exactly. That is the strength they cannot understand. Our unpredictability, our courage, our willingness to fight, no matter the cost." The rebellion had grown from a small spark to a raging flame. Humans from various colonies began coordinating larger missions, synchronizing attacks to coincide with Vrylok's patrol schedules. Entire supply lines were cut, reinforcements delayed, and morale plummeted. Even minor victories had outsized effects. Humans were turning fear into hope, and fear into chaos for their oppressors. The Vrylok's High Council gathered on SciFiPrime, furious and confused. Their reports spoke of phantom fleets, ambushed convoys, and civilians acting with audacity that defied logic. "They are clever," one commander admitted reluctantly. "They adapt too quickly. Our fear tactics fail against them." Another snapped. "They are humans. Fragile, weak. They should obey." 5-1-1. But the cracks were visible. The Vryloks, accustomed to obedience and terror, were unprepared for resistance driven by courage, creativity, and unity. They had never encountered a species willing to defy them, not for glory, but for survival and justice. In a hidden chamber beneath SciFiPrime, Kane prepared for the most daring mission yet, infiltrating the Vrylok's council chambers themselves. The goal was not just destruction, but revelation. Humans would show the galaxy the truth about the Vryloks, an empire built on cruelty, fear, and oppression. "Maris, are the devices ready?" Kane asked. "They're ready," she replied, placing small, concealed disruption units in a reinforced crate. "They'll scramble communications, shut down surveillance, and create enough confusion for our teams to move in undetected." Kane nodded. "Then, let's remind the Vryloks what they forgot. Humans cannot be controlled by fear alone." The infiltration was tense. Humans moved silently through hidden passages, using every trick they had learned over months of rebellion. Alarmed patrols ran into empty corridors, triggered decoy devices, and found nothing but shadows. The humans had learned to turn the Vryloks' confidence against them, exploiting their reliance on order and predictability. At the council chambers, Kane and his team deployed disruption devices, shutting down psychic wards and scrambling security feeds. The Vrylok's council, confident in their fortress, suddenly found themselves blind and vulnerable. Chaos erupted. Alien officials shouted orders that went unheeded as panic spread through the ranks. From the shadows, Kane addressed the council. You have ruled with fear for centuries. You believed humans were weak, fragile, and controllable. You were wrong. Your empire is not built on strength, it is built on obedience. And we refuse to obey. The council froze, stunned by the audacity of a human speaking directly to them. Kane continued. Every colony you oppressed, every life you destroyed, has only made us stronger. Your empire is crumbling because you cannot understand us. You cannot understand courage, unity, and hope. The disruption devices continued to spread confusion across the planet. Teams of humans moved quickly, striking key targets, freeing prisoners, and dismantling defenses. Vrylok's soldiers, accustomed to ruling through fear, were overwhelmed by unpredictability. Panic spread like wildfire. Outside, civilians and other oppressed species, inspired by human actions, began to rise. Small acts of defiance turned into coordinated resistance. Even the aliens' allies started questioning their loyalty as the humans' courage became impossible to ignore. Kane and Maris worked together seamlessly, directing teams, improvising strategies, and ensuring the mission's success. Every step reflected months of careful preparation, ingenuity, and relentless human determination. By the time the sun rose over SciFi-Prime, the humans had achieved what many thought impossible. The Vrylok's empire's heart was shaken. Communication lines were in ruins, patrols scattered, and the council forced into hiding. The galaxy had seen humans not as weak subjects, but as a rising force capable of challenging an entire empire. Kane looked over the battlefield from a hidden ridge. Smoke and fires dotted the capital below. His team, tired but victorious, gathered beside him. They underestimated us, Kane said quietly, and that was their mistake. They will never underestimate humans again, Maris smiled. And neither will anyone else in the galaxy. We've shown them what courage and unity can do. Jaro Lin, the young recruit, looked up at Kane. Commander, what now? Now, Kane replied. We continue. We rebuild. We inspire. The Vryloks may still exist, but their empire is no longer untouchable. Humanity has shown the galaxy that fear is not the strongest weapon courage is. News of the rebellion spread across the stars. Humans became a symbol of hope for all oppressed species. The flame grew, uniting colonies and species who had suffered under the Vryloks. Tales of human ingenuity, bravery, and resilience inspired countless individuals to rise against tyranny. And yet, Kane knew the fight was far from over. The Vryloks were powerful, cunning, and ruthless. But humans had learned something that could never be taken from them. Unity, courage, and the willingness to defy impossible odds. Somewhere in the shadows, the memory of Lena, the child whose death had sparked it all, burned brightly. Her name became the emblem of the rebellion, a reminder that even one life, cruelly taken, could ignite a force that would shake the galaxy. The humans of the flame had risen. The Vrylok's empire, once unchallenged, now faced a foe that could not be predicted, could not be crushed, and would not be controlled. As Kane looked to the horizon, he knew this was only the beginning. The humans would continue to strike, not for revenge alone, but to show the galaxy that courage and unity could overcome even the greatest tyrants. The flame had grown into a fire, and nothing would extinguish it.